Hi, I'm Cameron Williams, and this is my Furrstopia project. Um, so basically, the project I am going to be doing is character designs, digitally art designs, and basically it's going to be like a adventurer kind of horror kind of style game that the characters I'm drawing for. I want the game to be like 100+ hours because it's heavily Skyrim based. So it's gonna be like loads of exploration and monsters to fight. And it's gonna be on like PC and console, just like how Skyrim is. Um, and basically the main character is an adventurer with a sidekick going around battling monsters, because that's going to be like the main premise. So the genre and format, I'm gonna try to aim for 5 different characters, each with their own sort of different designs to see which best fits the style I'm going for. And yeah, I'm definitely with the Foley library. I'm gonna go with like so it's not my own sounds, but I'm gonna go with like medieval music because I really like that sort of era, and I think that era kind of best suits the adventures style game that my characters will be for. And basically, the character is just a lone adventurer with his sidekick going around and doing quests for people, getting gold and getting more missions to get more gold and getting more powerful kind of over the course of the game. And kind of I'm thinking about using like a double jump technique because there could be some platforming within the game, and it's going to be like a power that the adventurer can use to his advantage to get to like secret chests and like other areas that aren't accessible via the normal route. And yeah, like I was saying, I was heavily inspired by the medieval era because I've played so many games, like adventure games, where they've based it around the medieval era, like dragons and giants and mammoths, that kind of thing. It's definitely something I'm going to be sort of heavily in focused on, is trying to get the medieval history put into the characters. With the inspiration, I've been listening to loads of different medieval musics and the style that they use, like in taverns and other sort of like bards kind of music, and their clothes as well. Like stereotypically, a peasant's clothes is like poor, and farmers' kind of clothes is like rags, because they couldn't like afford like proper clothes, and they didn't have modern clothes. And the the key practitioners for me was Shigeru Miyamoto, the creator of Mario, because of I'm going for that style of platforming where you go around and like jump up and kill monsters, and you just move forward progress through the level. And the key industries for me were Nintendo and Bethesda. Bethesda made Skyrim, like Tom Howard made Skyrim, which is the where I'm heavily focused on, inspired by, was Skyrim and how big and open it was, with how the style was and everything. It was just definitely heavily focused. And Nintendo again was creator of Mario, platforming, and the style of like the mechanics, like double jump, was also it's what inspired me to base my characters on. Eastern debates. I'm thinking about going for 18 with the Peggy rating, because there's going to be probably a lot of violence in it, and mature language, because of just like how Skyrim, like the special edition, is at 18. This is going to be like kind of the same thing, where you go around, there's going to be like sort of blood in it as you kill monsters and enemies. And I'm going to go with like a stereotypical strong male lead, because that seems to be the main focus in all of the adventure games, is where you have like a strong male lead character and they fight and get something reward at the end. And the audience should end up feeling scared and energetic whilst looking at these characters and playing through the game, because the monsters are going to be horror based, like the enemies are going to be horror based. So the audience should feel scared, because that's the whole point of horror for me, is for the audience to get scared. They should also feel energetic, like when they're fighting the monsters, they should feel pumped up and ready to fight. Because with games, you have the music where when you start fighting enemies, the music changes to like upbeat, quick, and it just makes you feel ready and like actiony kind of feeling. I am gonna have a furry as the leader and a human as a sidekick, because I've seen too many kind of films or games where the furry is the sidekick, and they don't get quite a good look in. And so having a furry as a lead character, a strong lead character, the message it brings is that furries can be strong too, kind of thing. Because in today's society, furries are a new, or I say new, furries are kind of like an old thing that's still around, and they get hate because of people don't really understand the community, and so they get this bad reputation of furries, saying, oh, they're weird, and like they're not good, they're not a good thing, and they shouldn't be here. And so my message here is that, yeah, furries can be strong too, but they could also be sort of bad as well, so that if we can be equal. Not every furry is bad. You can have some good furries. So this is a real impact for me, is to get that message in there, because I myself am a furry. As far as the research plan goes, I'm going to focus primarily on teens, because I feel that that's what engages teenagers, is action games, and like you go around killing things. And then the secondary audience is going to be young adults, because, well, with 18s, that they're 18 people and older are classed as young adults, and so I'm thinking that they'd also be engaged with the game, not just the action, but also the scenery and like the art design, which is my main focus. And what I'm going to be designing is character turnarounds, so you can see that the front, the back, and the sides of the characters, and I can show off fully the clothes and the body shape effectively. Again, with each and their own different kind of style of clothes. But there have been problems that I have found with research, that there are not many games with furries in, so I'm quite in the dark about how I'm going to go about interpreting furries into games. Along with time restraints and PC issues, there are things that we can't control, like if your PC runs into a problem, or a screen burns out, or you have to go to an appointment and you can't fully focus on research. So this is going to be like a really problem, and to get around it, I am thinking about doing the main research first, like how furries are interpreted in art, and what animals are stereotyped, as in like wolves are evil and domestic dogs are nice, that kind of thing. When looking at like psychographic data, teenagers are normally what's known as strugglers, and that's the thought that they live by the "you only live once" rule, and that they spend like as soon as they get paid, they kind of pay out into like games, because they only live once, and they want to make sure that they have much like fun, so they have an escape. And so I'm going to be focusing on that factor when creating my characters, and trying to create a character that the audience can connect to, like relate to, but also explorers. because of with an open world game, people can go around and exploring the environment, and they can feel at peace while they're just discovering new things. With the other kind of data, I can't remember what it was called exactly, but it's only 12% back in 2019. Only 12% of games were rated as 18. And so that is quite large if you think about the number of games that are out there, but it's not entirely huge. Most of the games are like from 3 to 7 and 12s and 16s. So when creating an 18 game, I'm going to try and get all the factors from the other 18 games and put them into one game to try and engage the audience more, because most people like the 18 games because it's free. You can do basically what you want to the game without having to think too much about problems. Or obviously, with the main problems like racism, you can't quite put that into games without getting some backlash. So you do have to think a little bit about what to put in it without looking too bad. But other than that, you don't actually have to put too much effort into an 18 game. You can literally you can do what you want with it. The resources I have available to me is like I have Sketchbook Pro and a PC that can run 3ds Max. I also have a digital art pad and pen, so I can effectively my hand movements I can draw freely rather than having to use a mouse and try to get the have to change the pressure sensitivity. I could do that right from the onset with the pen, and it changes with me, and it's going to be, I feel it's going to be much easier to draw with. As far as time restraints, I'm like a time planning and time management. I'm thinking about doing the sort of hard things first and like easy stuff and detailing last, so that I can get the main bit done first and out of the way. And if I have time, come back and add like details to make it look more like nice and engaging to the eyes. I won't be using my own sounds because obviously I'm basically heavily on doing character design, so I won't be like adding any sounds or textures. It's just going to be the character art and turnarounds to show off my skills and what my thought process is. With my rationale, I really like doing digital art, and I have tons of patience. That's what makes me good with this kind of thing. I can sit there for ages doing drawing and doing detailing, and it's a really like strong passion of mine. So from this, I could go into like animation and digital art as a career, which then leads me on to my next point about what I want to do as a career. Um, I do really love digital art and visual effects, that kind of thing. So when getting a career, I could go into one of those two of doing digital art or visual effects to create these amazing characters and enemies for games or environments for games, and like and then show them off. For the stuff I have available to me is I have a really good PC, so I can do nearly everything at home apart from like things like Photoshop and other things that are like paid for services I won't be able to use, so I'll have to come into college for them. I will try to heavily focus on making a plan, because last year I did not make a plan and I went into it blindly. So to obviously change this to make it better, I am going to create a plan and plan out what I'm going to do and how much time I'm going to give to that project, so that I can use my time effectively to create the project efficiently, so that when I hand it in on time, it's going to be the best of my ability, because I've worked out all of the timings, all of the kind of restraints and what I think is going to be hard for me to do. and then I can get the hard things out of the way, and then focus, and then go on to detailing later when I feel everything is up to date and good, the best of my ability. Finally, there are quite a few threats I have found that will probably hinder my progress, and that is mainly time management, because my time management is not very good. I can get easily distracted. I can end up focusing too heavily on one thing, and then end up not having time to do something else. And so when planning, I am going to try and include that and try to work a way around it. Another threat is PC going wrong. It's stuff you cannot control because of you can say, for example, you're trying to open something and a file gets corrupted, or you accidentally delete a file and everything's gone. Those kind of problems you can't really solve. So I'm going to try and save often as much as possible, and try and hope that that nothing goes wrong. And then finally is because I can get distracted easily, I could end up not doing like a major part of my project, and then not be able to hand it on time because of obviously I'm trying to focus on getting it in. So I end up either rushing and the art comes out terribly, or I focus on doing quality over quantity and end up handing in like only one or two, or hand it in late because I'm trying to get to my goal rather than just handing it in. So then when planning again, I would try to focus on that and try to work out ways that are best for me to be able to plan and do and carry on doing work rather than just getting distracted. And yeah, that's it from me.
Okay, thank you, Cameron. Thanks for. I've got a sort of a range of questions, I suppose, that are coming out of that that I need to address, or I need you to address.
Yep.
You talk well. There's a lot of kind of, I think, a mixed messages. So I need to clarify some of the things that I'm not sure about. Hopefully, you'll be able to clarify them like that. So, if you can explain to me a little bit more about what a furry actually is, and like, in terms of how you see that being represented in a game. What exactly can you define what a furry is?
A furry is basically an anthropomorphic animal, which is an animal that has human characteristics, like walking on two legs, having 5 fingers, and being able to pick up things and talk, that kind of thing. Okay. And as far as represented in games, I've watched loads of films where kind of like wolves are kind of made to be the bad guy. Mm-hmm. And so I could use that stereotype to create like a bad character, but I could also go against the stereotype to show off that not like and make the wolf the good guy. But I'm gonna probably heavily focus on the stereotypes and follow the stereotypes where wolves are the bad guys and domestic dogs, like your average golden retriever, is the good guy, the heroine.
So is it mainly canine based then? Is it?
No, I'm gonna include like animals like monkeys and felines, that kind of thing, because I want a range of characters. I don't want to follow the same kind of style. I want a range of different characters that I could go for.
Okay. I'm sort of confused in terms of the genre and the age rating. I like when you talk about this, and when I'm getting a sort of visual of the type of game or the type of characters that they are. That doesn't like. Firstly, you've talked about 2 very distinctly different genres, or 3 actually, and the fact that you've got adventure, horror, and platformer going on. But also then talking about it being an 18 category. I mean, an 18 category tends to be extremely violent, extremely, very, if it's got violence as its core content, these anthropomorphized animals that you talk about, like they I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but they're often represented in quite a cutesy sort of visually a style that is not necessarily very intimidating or threatening, even if it is like you say an antagonist, a bad person. They're not very visually terrifying, for example. Would I be right in saying that?
Yeah, because of how Skyrim is, that's also like it's a 16 apart from the sort of special edition one that's an 18, and I've been playing that, and it's exactly the same as the normal Skyrim. So I may think about maybe going for a 16.
I think, but the difference there is that Skyrim, in its depiction of its characters, in its art style, is very, already is quite dark. Like you're saying, the addition of blood, the addition of gore and things into the game's content, then doesn't feel particularly weird. But if you've got essentially dogs or like people in costumes stood up that are then, there's graphic blood and gore content. I don't for me, I don't see how those things could ever.
Well, I'm gonna like when creating monsters, the stereotypical monsters is sharp teeth, red eyes, that kind of thing. And so I'm gonna interpret that into the art style and have like a really angry kind of evil looking furry rather than following the cute kind of design. Because the cute kind of designs are made to look cute. Whereas if you look at some of the other furry art where they're made to look evil, they are kind of like angry looking and destructive as well.
Okay. Even then, like if you think about your branding, the name Furrstopia like sounds like a utopia, or or maybe it's dystopian. But I think like that needs some work because it needs to be branded in such a way that it definitely distinctly sounds dark or sounds sinister. I think like even if it's it's supposed to be dystopian, I presume, in that it's dark and brooding, but that I think again that would need to be really kind of communicated, because as soon as you got those words together like fur and dystopia, like that doesn't sound like a negative thing or something. I wouldn't imagine picking that game up and thinking it was particularly dark.
The name was definitely a work in progress.
Okay. I think I think definitely think it needs some work in terms of considering this categorization of what the content is and what it kind of is about. I mean, you talk about other examples of games where there's furries that are present, that are sidekicks. Like, what are these games? What examples are you talking about there?
Well, mostly I can't think of one off the top of my head, but I've watched some animes where you have like a heroine as the human as the hero, and then as a sidekick they have like a cutesy little cat that just kind of follows them around.
Right. But what, a bipedal cat, like on its legs?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
And so I kind of want to draw away from that and like instead flip them around, that kind of thing, because I can't think of a game off the top of my head. But I do remember a game where a furry was a sidekick rather than the leader, but I can't remember the name of it at this moment in time.
Okay. The only title that I've heard of that has features like furries as I know them, or what I think they are, is a game called Winds of Change, which is a kind of more of a point and click game. Have you heard of that one?
I don't think so, no.
Okay. So again, I think like
I remember one game is like for the very first Xbox, was like Time Attack or Blink's Attack. I can't remember what that was. And it was like these felines that could stop time and solve puzzles to go through and fight off these like pigs as well. All of them were anthropomorphic and able to walk and stuff.
Yeah, I think that's really important that we get to define. I think in terms of changing the definition of the content, I'd probably think about that for sure, because I think that's a key thing. I also think if you're talking about a platform, it's very different to an action adventure like an RPG like Skyrim, where you're presenting from first and third person, you're talking to NPCs and things like that. Whereas a platformer, I struggle to think of a platform that you could play for 100 hours. That they're typically sort of segmented in terms of you have boss battles, you have end of levels and things like that. So I think the two genres that you mentioned there are distinctly different, and I think like you need to define one or the other. Like, you know, a Skyrim-esque adventure game where there's NPCs and characters and you change from first to third person, fine. But I think, yeah, I don't know necessarily if the whole thing of you talking about double jumps, and so
Yeah,
you're not
it's
actually
like
you're not planning to make anything that's interactive, are you? Just literally
no,
designing 5
it's just
characters.
just designing crowd characters. With the platforming, I don't mean like it's heavily in platform based. I mean just like because there was like a cliff, and there was no like good way up. You just have to like stand on a rock to get up, that kind of thing. But it's
Okay,
not
so
actually like a platformer itself. It's just got platforming in.
right, okay, yeah. It sounds to me still very much like it's in its infancy in terms of an idea. And I think what you need to do if you're going to go with this is tighten it down very quickly in terms of categorizing it, thinking about it being, you know, whether it is an action adventure or an RPG game. In which case, you know, I think that the art style might need to, I mean, fair enough if you want to focus on, I get where you're focusing on the darker characters, you want to focus on characters that have a sort of sinister edge to them, and in which case I think, like, again, you know, if it is that, like you're saying, that stereotypically they latch on to these characters being predators, carnivores, or things that, you know, typically are scary to humans, that is fine. But again, that's where your research needs to lead you, and I need to see that happening in your research. Do you know what I mean? So you can say, right, okay, these types of species are typically categorized as negative, and if you're going to flip that on its head, fine, but you need to show how you're going to do that as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that needs to be demonstrated in your research. And I think, obviously, you know, as a perspective. So when you say that you're a furry, that means explain that. How do you define yourself in that sense?
Basically, I'm a fan of like anthropomorphic art. I kind of identify myself with that kind of group that also likes the art. Whereas like normal people just don't like the art themselves, and they're just like they don't look at it at all.
Okay. That's fine. I think the other thing I need to define more, and this is probably where this pitch needs to have a greater definition, is you know, there's a lot of things that you've talked about on a wider scale that were unnecessary. So we've got, like, mentioned, like, quite a lot of talk about audio and mechanics which aren't relevant. What I need to know in this process is you're designing 5 characters. They're essentially from a negative sort of perspective, but are they all antagonists, or are they and what's defining the style of them? Are they different classes? So is some say bulkier than others, or, you know, how are you defining the design process for these 5 characters, and what different formats will they take, or are they all the same?
Well, from my plan that I made from the mind map, I'm gonna have like 2 good characters and 3 kind of antagonists. The first antagonist is going to be kind of like a slim kind of built character, because they're basically like a mob that you would find like very commonly in the game, where they're just like a henchman kind of thing.
Okay.
The second evil character is going to be a little bit more bulky. He's going to be like he's very like he's not intelligent.
Okay. What if I can stop you there? I think what I would need, I think we might have to do a repitch on this one, but I think what you need to do, I think, is really define, and this stuff that you're talking through now is the important thing. I need to know, like, okay, I'm going to do 5 characters, and they're going to be, you know, like I say, they're different classes. The things that define the style of them are based on research that is informed by class systems. So, like, let's say one's a brawler, one's a stealth thing, one's a healer. You know, these kinds of things are important to helping to define that. And I think if you are just sort of, you know, these ideas are just coming to your head from examples that you played, that you haven't really explored that thoroughly, then you're not going to give yourself the best opportunity to really fully realize these and focus this down. I think, like, that's one of the key things, that you have the focus of going, right, you know, in this franchise, the enemies are going to be represented as carnivores, because that's how furries typically are represented. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then equally like the antagonists that are that way, but the protagonists are, like you're saying, then dogs bait or whatever they might be based on. But is that defined by their combat style, or is that defined by their physical, their physical appearance is defined by the breed of species that they are? Do you know what I mean? So those things need to be resolved from a point of view of you showing that awareness, and that again, I think needs to be demonstrated. So have you been, for example, like as part of this pitch, it might have been nice to see some early concepts that you've sketched. Have you got some of that going on?
I haven't designed characters for this project yet. But
No,
I
wouldn't.
Yeah, but I do have like some furry art that I do have at home.
Okay, and so you're looking at when you're generating that, are you looking at following certain techniques to achieve the style? How are you getting that?
I kind of it's not I kind of use templates to get like the shape, and then to get like the color scheme, and I like the general idea of what it's going to look like. I just kind of just sort of think about it and then plan what I'm going to do. Like when I normally do kind of like evil characters, so I go with like the stereotypical kind of scar, over the eye, muscular, and like using dark colors.
Okay. Yeah, and again, I think it's fine to talk about stereotypes, and it's fine to discuss those, and I think that would be a good grounding for a project. But I think what you need to do at the pitch stage is to say, right, the stereotypes are this because of this. I've seen this in the research. This influences this, and this shows where that's coming from. You know what I mean? Like, rather than what I'm relying on here is you describing a lot of things. There's not much presented in the way of examples. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's a crucial thing for you to then try to examine and explore as part of this process.
Okay.
Does that make sense then? Do you know what you need to do now in order to further this?
Kind of talk about more about instead of talking about how I'm gonna do it, talk about what I'm actually going to do.
Yeah, and I think it's good to give a context to the game. I think that even needs revision so that it, I think categorization wise, that you think about like, okay, what products exist on the market that demonstrate this kind of style that would work in that sense. And I typically think that if I've seen, from my recollection of what these characters look like, they're kind of cartoony and cutesy, aren't they? A lot of the time.
Yeah.
So in going against that, it's fine, but to get that to then be at a point where they look like it could work as an 18 rated horrific game that is, containing gore and containing content that's challenging for an audience, it would go against what I'd imagine would be the typical audience for this game. So then you're creating a very niche outcome, which would have to be really well justified if it's going down that route. But if it was less kind of sinister, that you do have enemies, you have protagonists and antagonists that are based on a certain style, I think that would be fine. But it needs a bit more presenting in terms of justification for that, and I think less talk about things that are irrelevant like double jumping and audio, and more about just specifically what it is that you're going to be implementing in terms of a game mechanic. It's fine to say it's an action RPG like Skyrim with involving furries, but with a darker theme. But then how are we going to present these characters? What are we looking at here, and how are they going to be communicated to the audience that would be receptive of this? And I think that, again, you're part of a community where you can speak to people that are in this community. Is that something that you can immediately get hold of in terms of research?
I think so, yeah.
Well, if you're not, then that again, might be something to explore as part of this to sort of gauge opinion, or whether again, like with this kind of content, would be viable, whether the people would expect to see something that's more user friendly. And again, that's another conflict, is like we've got Miyamoto as a reference there for platforming. We talked a lot about platforming with Miyamoto, and Miyamoto games are very much, I'd imagine, more in line with what furry representation is, like quite cutesy, quite user friendly, quite could engage with a younger audience and things. So if we're going in the face of that, we need to talk about why that is. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll stop recording this now, Cameron, and I'll send you the video. You can upload this and reflect on it. I think we'll look at having another go at this this time next week. So we'll look if you can revise the content, get some drafts, get some research that supports it and shows these sort of stereotypes, and get some concept art down. So what we need to have is a really defined idea about what these 5 characters, the different types of class that will be, and what they enabling you to achieve. And you're going on to uni, is that correct? Like, what course are you going to look at to do?
Well, I've got an offer from Falmouth for visual effects, and also I'm looking at Bath Spa for audio.
Okay, so yeah, if if you're wanting to do VFX and audio, and you then wanted to take these characters, if you're doing them digitally, to present them in, you're talking about a turnaround, but then maybe it would make more sense to present them in a kind of a menu format using After Effects and the techniques you did last year to make them present with a character bio and things, so they're like a kind of a menu item instead. Maybe that might help to enable those skills. So if you're keen to implement audio and VFX skills, then that might be a way to build that, and then maybe reduce the amount of characters that you present, so like 3, but present them in a format where they're in a kind of character bio / menu page as a video sequence or something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Would that sound like something that would be, would work for you, or do you just really want to focus on concept art?
I think I'm going to focus on concept art, just so that because I want to like expand my sort of capabilities on character art, because I feel like it's kind of at the moment mediocre, and I want to improve that. So
yeah, that's fine. So yeah, and again, I think like one of the things to research is how characters are presented, the different types of ways. You talked about turnaround, but some nice color, nice perspective images with different costume design, etc., could be a way to explore that, color scheme samples and things like that. So if you can bring some of that to the table in the next round, that'd be great.
Okay.
Right, thank you very much. We'll stop it there, and then we'll come back and put that together onto your web page in a second. All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.